using protests policy.
Protesting
there is a difference
to change
between
public policy is problematic. You heard it from the mouth of the dictator.
And saying we're not going until this is changed in a way that is massively disruptive and potentially
You heard it from the mouth of the
Why is it frozen?
Public policy to change, and we're trying to convince.
Refresh? Is this? It's been glitching, and I don't know why. Let's just see in small. Here we go.
Tests
to here we go.
Demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome.
Using protests to demand change to public policy is something that you find worrisome.
Sorry, to a certain
That's the definition of a dictator.
Protest, if you are protesting that the government is, shutting down a safe injection site or something, you are asking for changes in public.
I don't know what's going on. All right, let's end that. Boomer Tech is right. No, it's not. This is not me anymore. I blame Twitter. I blame the interwebs. I'm joking. It's who cares? What's up? Saturday morning. And I consider it, and I'm not being hyperbolic, I consider it to be like one of the darkest days in Canada. And it's the darkest day for Canada in my lifetime, without a question. I'm going to be 44 in May. In my lifetime, what has been a darker day for the future of Canada than what occurred yesterday? I can't think of any. And it's tough to stomach, it's tough to digest, it's tough to make sense of, and most importantly, it's tough to understand the people cheering this on. The people relishing in this, not just Trudeau, liberal sycophants, people who think this ends with their enemies. So for those of you who have not yet heard, this is, what's the date today? It's about a year to the day that Justin Trudeau came in with an iron fist of fury after a little over 3 weeks of not even bothering to talk with protesters who drove across the country to exercise their God-given right to protest. People seem to forget that although we have a charter of rights, they refer to, let me see if I can pull it up. They refer to rights that are God-given rights. The entire charter is to be understood under the supremacy of God, something along those lines. The word God comes into it. The word God comes into it because our charter of rights was crafted off of the American Constitution. I mean, I don't know if it was like literally like they said, hey, that's a good idea, let's copy it, but it was inspired. Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of mobility, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech. Apparently, we have none of those anymore. And people are going to say I'm being hyperbolic and I'm being a rage farmer. We have none of those anymore, at least we in Canada. And to a certain extent, the rest of the world. This is a global descent into tyranny being ushered in by people who don't understand what they're sacrificing. I should have mentioned, geez, Keith Wilson is not coming today. He's going to be on Monday. Timing wasn't going to work out today, and plus I'm not going to be good company. We have a charter of rights. Supremacy of God, we have these rights that cannot be violated except in as much as can be reasonably justified in a free and democratic society. You know what? I have to bring it up. Let's go read the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Let me bring this up here. Here we go. Let me bring it up. It's law. It's a law in Canada. And we see what law on paper looks like in reality. Here, let's just the Constitution Act, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Are we looking at the same thing? We are. Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law, we have neither. I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Trudeau tries to amend that and put in the supremacy of Trudeau, the supremacy of government. You know, he'll do it benevolently. The supremacy of government. It's not about me. It's about government and the rule of law. The rule of law, which has now ratified and sanctioned the extrajudicial freezing of bank accounts, the violent suppression of peaceful protest. No, that's it. It's okay. We're going to get there. So this is a little over the year anniversary of Justin Trudeau coming down with a fist of fury. Oh, he didn't bring in the military. He just brought in armored vehicles, snipers, a militarized RCMP, Sudbury Police, Sûreté de Québec, OPP. Oh my, he didn't bring in the military. Understand that, people. We're not doing. We're not bringing in the military. We're just bringing in RCMP, armed, batons, riot gear, horses that stomp and trample 81-year-old Indigenous women, snipers on rooftops, drones. There was the RCMP, the Ontario Provincial Police, I think the OPS, Ontario Police Services, Sudbury Police, Sûreté de Québec. Oh, but he didn't have the military, so he didn't violate our rights. So it's a little over a year to the day that Trudeau, after having spent 3 weeks hiding from COVID, hiding in British Columbia, not engaging one lick with the protesters, just to talk. I mean, these are his citizens, after all. These are the citizens he's supposed to be governing. Doesn't engage whatsoever, looks for the pretext to invoke the Emergencies Act, does it, beats up veterans, cuffs them, arrests people, puts people in pretrial detention for months for nonviolent mischief charges, invokes the Emergencies Act. We have a 6-week hearing. It was actually more because they had policy after the 6 weeks of evidence. Commissioner Rouleau yesterday issued his final report. I didn't read the whole thing. It's 2,000 pages. It's 4 volumes of let me just show you what it looks like. Divide, conquer. Make sure nobody's ever going to read this thing. Although, between everybody on the internet, we'll get the important parts. That's part 1. Here we go. Look at this. Just what's this here? Final report, people. Here, go ahead and download it. Volume 1. Volume 2. Volume 3. 3 megabytes, by the way. 2 megs, 3 megs, 4. Volume 5, 7 megs. Policy papers. Enjoy reading it. Let me just take the 2 meg one. Shut up, Meg. Sorry, that was... let me just take the 2 meg one, and I've lost my window. How many pages is just... Oh, this one's only a cool 273 pages. So just a couple of 2,000 page volume thing. You know what the conclusion it came to? Justin Trudeau met the threshold of invoking the Emergencies Act to quell, to violently suppress the most peaceful, joyous protest Canada had ever seen, and I think the world. Is the wind? Is it? This is. Hold on a second. Okay. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. What do I know? Oh, by the way, so before I get into my correction, I like to make my corrections more public than my mistakes. Are we currently streaming on Locals? If I refresh. Okay, so it says no, yes, and no. So I get 2 no, 1 no, 3 yeses. I don't see myself, however. Okay, so let me just try to figure something out on... It's good. I can't see anything, but people say it's good. So, okay. So we're actually simultaneously streaming on Rumble, Locals, and YouTube. Good. It looks like it's working on Locals. I can't see myself on Locals, but it doesn't matter. Okay. Let me see that we're good on Rumble. The death of Canada. We're good on Rumble. And let me see where else we should be good. I didn't put the link to Rumble in YouTube. Give me 1 second. I knew I forgot something. I was a little depressed is the word. I mean, there's no silver lining to this. Link to Rumble. And I'm not trying to be dramatic and hyperbolic, and I'm not going to cry like Aquila, obviously, after Hillary Clinton lost. This is, I mean, people don't know what they've just sacrificed. People don't know what they're ushering in, and people don't know and don't appreciate what just happened. Because there was a protest that lasted 3 weeks in downtown Ottawa that upset some people because of honking horns, and people have just willingly relinquished their most fundamental God-given rights. Oh, but it'll stop with those pesky, racist, xenophobe, transphobe, extremist truckers. It'll stop there. And Justin Trudeau's internet streaming censorship is going to stop at broadcasters. All right, so let's do the first thing of the day, which is going to be something of a correction. Now, there was a claim being made on Twitter that Justice Rouleau had family ties to Justin Trudeau. Let me make sure that we're seeing the same thing. We are. So there was a claim that Justin's aunt married a Pierre Rouleau, whose brother was Paul Rouleau, who is the Commissioner Rouleau. Call me late to the game where I didn't hear this or appreciate this, and I heard this yesterday or read it yesterday, and so I go to fish into this, not knowing the debate apparently had already been had on the interwebs. And sure enough, there is information that back in the day, here you go, you got to hear. I can't bring that up any bigger, but Ise Rouleau, Pierre Rouleau, sister of Pierre Trudeau, and then you have on another website a family tree which indicates a Paul Pierre Rouleau, and people made the connection, as did I. Then what happens is you go and you Google around, and then you see people referencing a Wikipedia page that had been altered after this information was public to remove this information, and you have people showing a screen grab of Wikipedia with the entry, Commissioner Paul Rouleau is the brother of a man who married Justin Trudeau's aunt, and people share that. Then you see that Wikipedia entry was apparently deleted, and then you say, oh, they deleted it, or the reflex is one of two things. Oh, it's deleted because it's true, and now this is part of the cover-up, or it was deleted because it was based on the same misunderstanding, misapprehension of people wrongly concluding that a Pierre and Paul Rouleau of old are the same as the Pierre and Paul Rouleau who Pierre married. All right. And so I tweeted, this is insidious corruption, and I'll correct myself if this information is inaccurate, and I will correct myself. It's not a question of pride. It's a question of accuracy, and it's a question of if you have said something which turns out not to be accurate, the correction, in as much as humanly possible, has to be more broadcast and more vocal than the error itself. While if I were a Snopes fact checker at this point, I would say that this is false, maybe at best bordering on unconfirmed, because we're dealing with like internet information wars where people who say this is false show a screen grab of an obituary of another Rouleau, the Rouleau apparently, who married Justin Trudeau's aunt. And they say, look, it's fake because here's a screen grab that shows that it's fake. And you have like battle of the screen grabs, battle of the digital information in terms of accuracy. But by all accounts, it does look like it's a mistake between people bearing the same name. Rouleau is not exactly the most uncommon French-Canadian last name. And there's no necessarily even distant familial ties between Paul Rouleau, the commissioner, his brother, who seems to have been a Pierre Rouleau, Justin Trudeau's aunt, who married a Pierre Rouleau, but not necessarily the same Pierre Rouleau. So at the very least, unconfirmed, but probably more bordering on a confusion among names. And so mea culpa, correction issue. So the corruption doesn't lie in familial, albeit distant connections, to the extent that it's actually not true, although potentially still true. It doesn't lie there. You know where it does lie? Oh, a little more directly than that. This is from Brian Lilly, who works for the Toronto Sun and not the Toronto Star. Lilly, don't use inquiry to sweep Emergencies Act failings under rug. Oh, they did that, Lilly. It's done. Not only did they use the Emergencies Act to sweep the failings under the rug, they ratified the government incompetence that led to the government invoking the nuclear weapon of legislation to violently suppress a peaceful protest. But that's where we're going to get there. Right now, we're talking about the Commissioner Rouleau, who does not seem to be the brother of the uncle-in-law to Justin Trudeau. It's not a familial corruption. It's just a political one. Listen to this. Paul Rouleau, appointed to the bench in 2002 by Paul Martin Liberal government, isn't simply someone who made a small donation or two or went to a cocktail fundraiser with a client working as a lawyer. He actually worked for the Liberal Party in the past. In 1983, he was part of John Turner's leadership campaign to take over when Pierre Trudeau announced his retirement. Rouleau then had a hand in helping pick Turner's cabinet once he won leadership, and is described in various media reports as either his executive assistant or appointments secretary in media reports from that era. Rouleau could be completely impartial. Sure, he could, if he does his job right. Or he could do what the government wants, which is look at everything but government actions, which isn't what the part of the Emergencies Act mandating an inquiry calls for. Okay, so here we go. So, it seems that the corruption does not come from familial relations, although it might still. It comes from much more immediate and much more direct political affiliations. Maybe he can be impartial. Maybe he can. So, correction number one, and I said I would correct myself if the information turned out to be inaccurate. It looks like there is not the familial relation that some people thought there was. And oddly enough, in this era of digital information warfare, Wikipedia entries and deletions can be weaponized in both ways, where people can go and add something wrong or false to a Wikipedia entry. But then when people see that wrong or false entry being deleted, they think it's deleting a true entry. And the destabilizing of society and information itself takes effect. The corruption is just pure political corruption. Political ties, political affiliation, political support. And lo and behold, Justin Trudeau went from having to have a press conference in which he probably would have had to announce his resignation to being empowered to do exactly what he did a year ago, violate every one of our most sacred fundamental rights and get the ratification of a government inquiry conducted by a partisan commissioner with political ties to the very party that he was investigating. Nothing to see here. Let me see this here. Brad Raymond, Viva Frei, do you want to bet that nowhere in the report where there'll be any criticism of Trudeau's early and often divisive and insulting rhetoric? Hey, dude, I can't read that unless they put that 2,000-page thing on audiobook. I'll get the highlights, which we're going to go over now. Oh, let's get some chats. Foregone conclusion and show trial justification. Here's my problem with that. I did not think it was I thought it was a foregone conclusion that it would be a slap on the wrist. I thought it was a foregone conclusion it would be a slap on the wrist, but a reprimand. A very stern worded, don't just use the Emergencies Act to do willy-nilly. You have to exhaust all of... Anybody who watched the bloody inquiry knows that it's a bloody joke. They admitted, every element of authority, every aspect of government admitted they had existing laws that were sufficient to put an end to this protest. They could have gone to the courts to get an injunction. They could have invoked the criminal code to arrest people, to remove trucks. Every element of government acknowledged they had the tools required to end that protest, even in the absence of some form of negotiation and discussion. But tyrants don't negotiate, tyrants don't discuss, and tyrants don't lower themselves to the filth of the citizenry that they rule over. You know, unless there's virtue signaling points to come out of it. There was another super chat that I missed here. Let me see if this one. Sancho Relaxo. Anyone here actually believe Beta Boy actually takes the State Department's call on all of these? It's all deputy banderista people. Come on. Everyone who watched that inquiry saw they were the violence that they talked about was perceived violence. You heard the Ottawa authorities. Perceived violence, microaggressions. It was a joke from the beginning. It was an obvious conclusion It should have been from the outcome. What irritates me now is everybody saying, "Oh, it was a show trial from the beginning. Everyone knew that." No, hey, maybe I'm dumb, or maybe I'm even more naive than I think I am. No matter how cynical I get, I'm still being naive. What was foregone is that there had to be a sanction for this rule, for this invocation of the Emergency Act. There had to be, because if there were not going to be, it's the end of freedom in Canada. And lo and behold, it's the end of freedom in Canada. And I'm not exaggerating. Hold on. Let's just hear it from the mouth of the dictator himself. Here. Oh no, we got the using protest. Let's just hear it from the mouth of the dictator himself. Where is it? Tabarnouche. I opened the thing. I had. Okay, Lawton. Justin Trudeau. Here we go. Let's listen to this. Let's break this down. Well, maybe we'll go through the full 7 minutes of it, as much as it will make people barf. I'll say what I was going to say afterwards. Here, let's go.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Je suis ici aujourd'hui avec la vice-première ministre Freeland.
Look at the face of someone who got away with political murder. Whether or not he knew from the beginning, this speech could have been one of two things: a resignation in shame at having violated the sanctity of a free and democratic society, or a victory lap. And he's going to be so gracious in victory, as abusers typically are. Look at all of them. Look at Mendicino in the back. I can't believe it happened. I can't believe we got away with it, people. Mendicino, who lied about the RCMP asking the federal government to invoke the Emergencies Act. Look at that. Look at that smug smirk in the back. We did it. We killed Canada.
Et les ministres Blair, Lametti et Mendicino. Je veux commencer par remercier le commissaire Paul Rouleau et tous les gens qui ont participé et travaillé pour faire aboutir le rapport de la Commission sur l'état d'urgence.
The Commission's report.
We were very clear from the beginning that invoking the Emergencies Act included the launch of a public inquiry to look at how and why we got there.
Stop it. An abuser taking credit for something that he has no right to take credit for. We were very clear from the beginning that we were going to call this. What did he say here? Let me see.
The Emergencies Act included the urgence. We were very clear from the beginning that invoking the Emergencies Act included the launch of a public inquiry to look at how and why we got there.
The mentality of an abuser. We were very clear that invoking the Emergencies Act would include an inquiry. No, you weren't, Trudeau. It's in the law. It had nothing to do with your benevolence. And you tried to limit the scope of the commissioner's investigation. You tried to limit what the commissioner was going to look into because I guess you didn't know the fix was in back then. You don't get to take credit for this. You didn't do it as an act of benevolence. It was in the legislation itself. I suspect you knew at the time it was going to happen. But imagine this abusive tyrant now taking credit for the transparency, saying we were always going to, I was clear that you were going to investigate it's in the law. It was always in the law.
This was an essential step to ensure transparency and accountability.
It wasn't an essential step. It was a baked-in legislative step. Oh, but I did it. I ordered the investigation into myself because I'm not a tyrant. I'm the most transparent person ever.
During the inquiry, I welcomed the opportunity to appear and to answer the Commission's questions, as did all my colleagues.
And you perjured yourself for the entire world to see, Justin. You think we're dumb? That we don't remember the insults and the slurs that you hurled against Canadians? Those people are putting us all at risk. Oh, these people who are anti-vax, they're anti-science, ils sont souvent misogynes. They're oftentimes misogynist. Those women who don't want to take a jibby jab because it might interfere with their period, they're misogynists. Ils sont souvent extrémistes. They're oftentimes extremists. And we have to ask ourselves as a society, do we tolerate these people? Oh, but they take up space. Oh no. And then you get up in front of Commissioner Rouleau and lie under oath about having never called Canadians names. Oh yeah, we saw your testimony, Trudeau.
The work of the Commission and everyone involved was very important not only to better understand what happened a year ago, but to have a roadmap going forward for any future government.
Do you understand what he just said? Not just to understand what happened, but to set out or lay out the groundwork for any future government. You know what that groundwork is now? Declare a protest illegal. You can invoke the Emergencies Act. You can freeze bank accounts. That's the roadmap, people. You know what that roadmap looks like? It looks like the roadmap to 2030. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Oh, I'm sorry. That's conspiracy theory, right? I can't talk about the Great Reset, Agenda 2030. Oh, yeah, we can, because we now know that it's an actual thing. Let's just hear it again. Let's just hear it again, because it's so beautiful to the ears.
Understand what happened a year ago.
You need to understand what
but
happened.
To have important, not only to better understand what happened a year ago, but to have a roadmap going forward.
Look at Chrystia Freeland.
For any future government.
Look at Chrystia
But to
Freeland's
have
face.
A roadmap.
Yes,
going
the
forward
roadmap.
For any future government.
You got the roadmap. It's a roadmap to the basic dictatorship of China that you envy so much, Justin. You got that roadmap. He's telling us, he's telling you in real time, this is the future of Canada. You get a petty tyrant in power who doesn't feel that he needs to listen to or negotiate or compromise with the very people he was elected to represent, that he's paid to represent. When he decides it's an illegal protest, well, then you can get the shit kicked out of you. You can get your bank accounts frozen with absolutely no recourse. And understand this, Commissioner Rouleau ratified the extrajudicial freezing of bank accounts. He ratified it. Said it's an inconvenient fact that it also, captures spouses of people who are at the protest, as if that's the biggest problem. Ratified tyranny. It's a roadmap for future governments. Yes, it is.
Today, the Public Order Emergency Commission stated that the very high threshold to invoke the Emergencies Act was met.
Oh, the very high threshold. Bouncy castles, hockey playing on 4 blocks of downtown Ottawa. It was met. That's the threshold, people. The threshold has been met. That's the threshold. Enjoy the hell we are collectively ushering in.
He found that what we experienced last year was a national emergency that threatened the security of Canadians.
A national emergency geolocated to downtown Ottawa that threatened the security of Canadians because of, let's even call it a disruptive protest, an extended disruptive protest, geolocated in Ottawa, was a national security. It reminds me, who's seen the movie The Jerk? When Steve Martin is at the fair and he's talking about, step right up, you can win a prize. Anything on this wall, in between these 2 panels, anything in this small area located between the toothpaste and... Yeah, it was a national emergency. What was geolocated in downtown Ottawa posed a national security. And you know how the judge might have gotten to the national security issue? Diagolon. We'll get there. A national security threshold had been met because of a protest, an extended disruptive protest, geographically limited to downtown Ottawa, Parliament Hill. The roadmap has been set, people.
Our job as a government is always to keep people safe, and invoking the Emergencies Act was the necessary thing to do to remove the threat and to protect people.
Oh, the threat of the protest. Because you remember little liar in the back there, Mendicino, said that the truckers were threatening women with rape. You remember that? I remember that. I couldn't get all these clips lined up, but trust me. And if I make a mistake, I'll correct myself. Mendicino, in a line of questioning with Raquel Dancho, said that the protesters were threatening women with rape. And Raquel Dancho, at the time, one of the things I correct myself on, I didn't know that she was being facetious or ironic, said, well, how could you have let women members of parliament walk among these rapist protesters? It was so dangerous. How could you have put us all at risk like that, Mendicino? I didn't realize that she was being sarcastic. The threat that these protesters posed. Crime went down in Ottawa during the protest. I was there. I saw it. I never felt safer walking in downtown Ottawa than when that protest was going on. The homeless people were getting fed. Sidewalks were getting salted. This is Orwellian fabricating reality to justify tyranny. Sorry.
We've all been through a lot over these past years.
Yeah, some of us more than others, Justin. Some of us more than others, and I'm not including myself in that. I've been through a lot, but other people have been through much more. Oh, we've all been through a lot. I had to cross into my Quebec summer home when interprovincial travel was when I disallowed interprovincial travel. I felt very bad breaking those rules. Hey, Justin, we've all been through a lot. One of your liberal ministers, or whoever the heck that guy was, went to St. Bart's for Christmas with a pre-recorded video of how Canadians are going to have to celebrate Christmas differently this year. And he published that pre-recorded video telling Canadians that they were going to have to celebrate Christmas differently this year while he was sunbathing in St. Bart's. Doug Ford met with his daughters while other Canadians were not allowed to meet with their kids. Oh yeah, we've all been through a lot, but some of us have been through more than others. We're all in this together, but some of us are in it more together than others. Rich or poor, it's good to be rich, and it's good to be part of the political elite.
Canadians have been stressed, faced real financial challenges, and lost loved ones.
No, we have not been stressed and faced real financial challenge. You have stressed us. You have subjected us to financial challenges, and you and your provincial counterparts prevented us from being with loved ones while they died. Nothing can be more inhumane than that. So, no, it didn't just happen, Trudeau. You did it. And then when people protested about what you did to them, you didn't listen to them. You didn't talk to them. You didn't meet with them. You didn't bring in the military. You just brought in your goon squad to beat the ever-loving piss out of them. And you just got away with it.
Many people came to Ottawa because they were hurting and wanted to be heard.
Yeah, and you know what? You hurt them more and you didn't listen to them.
In our country, everyone has the right to protest peacefully. That's a fundamental right that government will always defend.
Until it decides it no longer wants to defend it. Until it decides that violence is microaggressions. Violence is the perception of violence. Until it decides that occupying a street, parking cars is no longer peaceful. Then they will come in and beat the shit out of you. Oh, I'm sorry. And they did. Chris Deering, I remember I was at the protest and I saw a big burly trucker sobbing his eyes out. I remember the street because it was down. So you went, there was the Cenotaph, the Wellington, and I was all the way down on the other end, a big burly trucker at the back of his rig sobbing. And I was doing the on the street interviews and I wanted to ask him what was going on, but it was not a time where a human wanted to be seen in the public, let alone in live. He was sobbing because that was the day I found out afterwards that the government had beat the ever-loving piss out of Chris Deering, a veteran who is 140 pounds soaking wet. Like I think he might even been a little shorter than me, but I interviewed him. Assaulted, handcuffed, lost one of his medals, hauled off like a bag of trash out of Ottawa into the outskirts, and then left in the winter snow. No. That's Justin Trudeau's Canada. Ratified. Commissioner Rouleau ratified it.
Here in Ottawa, people are used to political activity and protests on Parliament Hill.
Yeah, when it's BLM and stuff that they like. When it's BLM, trans rights, they're cool with that. But when they're not cool with it, Emergencies Act.
But as the commissioner said, lawful protests descended into lawlessness, culminating in a national emergency. Streets were blockaded in our capital city for weeks, causing serious harm to families and small businesses.
Small businesses. Can you imagine this pathological abuser? The 3 weeks of protest caused financial harm to the small businesses, not the year and a half of lockdowns, or a year, whatever, that led to those protests. When the government locks you down and causes you financial harm, it's for the greater good. When there's 3 weeks of protest, it's violence. And by the way, any one of those businesses that had stayed open during the protest would have done gangbuster business. No one was breaking windows, unlike other protests. No one was spray painting walls, unlike other protests. No one was shouting obscenities. Maybe they were saying, F Trudeau. Any business that would have stayed open would have done gangbuster business. But the government, Ottawa, told them to shut down. And the ones that didn't, cafe, I'm going to forget the name of the cafe. They sick their goons on them.
Aux frontières, à plusieurs endroits du pays,
Aux frontières on the
les
border.
barrages nuisaient à notre économie et mettaient en danger la sécurité publique.
So at the borders, at several places across the country, blockades were causing problems and interfering with our economy. You know what the problem is? Liar, liar, pants on fire, Trudeau. All of those blockades were resolved by the time you invoked the Emergencies Act. Even the one at the Windsor Bridge was resolved by the time Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. This came out at the hearing. And you know how the one at the Windsor Bridge was resolved? Oh, no Emergencies Act. They went to court and got a bloody injunction. No. So now history will be rewritten for the ignorant. And the ignorant, the unaware, the willfully blind are going to say he had to do it to free up the border. The border blockings had been resolved. The Windsor blockade had been resolved via court order because all measures required to resolve the issue existed currently under the law. Hence, item number 1 to invoking the Emergencies Act had not been met.
Par exemple, à chaque jour au pont Ambassadeur,
For
c'est
example,
300
every day at the Ambassador Bridge,
de marchandises qui transitent entre Windsor et Détroit.
millions of dollars or billions
Des
of dollars,
milliers de personnes
millions of dollars of merchandise crosses the border between Windsor and Michigan, or Windsor and Michigan, yeah.
de familles et d'emplois dépendent de la circulation de ces marchandises.
Families and businesses and employment relies on the free flow of this merchandise. That's just, where I'm going with the punchline here.
Le fait de bloquer ce pont
The act of
était tout
blocking it
simplement inacceptable.
was unacceptable. Hey, you know what the problem was, Trudeau? It had been resolved by the time you invoked the Emergencies Act via a court injunction. Hey, isn't it a bloody miracle that, Lexi Lee, the plaintiff there for the class action lawsuit, she went to get an injunction to stop the honking of the horns. The government never went to court to try to get an injunction to order the removal of trucks, to order people knowingly parked there to move their trucks or face contempt. They never did that. Why would they never have done that? It's almost like everything Justin Trudeau did or did not do for the 3.5 weeks leading up to the invocation of the Emergencies Act was done or not done specifically to allow him to invoke the Emergencies Act. And by the way, we know this because they had a negotiated settlement of sorts the day he invoked, or the day before he invoked the Emergencies Act. I forget if it was the Sunday of or the Sunday before the Monday. They had a negotiation that would have made it unnecessary to invoke the Emergencies Act. The government refused that settlement or disregarded that settlement and then invoked the Emergencies Act. Everything Trudeau did or did not do for the 3.5 weeks leading up to it was specifically done or not done for the purposes of allowing him to invoke the Emergencies Act, even if he knew, because this also came out during the commission, even if he knew that by invoking the Emergencies Act, he was actually going to exacerbate or foment anti-government sentiment that may have not existed in the first place. They knew it. CSIS, I forget what, the Canadian Security of Intelligence, whatever, CSIS advised that by invoking the Emergencies Act, Trudeau is actually going to do more to exacerbate or foment anti-government sentiment than not. And he did it nonetheless because he was trying to provoke the very reaction that he never got in the first place to justify the invocation.
Ce barrage mettait en péril le commerce avec les États-Unis, les chaînes d'approvisionnement essentielles.
The blockade put in peril the supply chain with the U.S.
et l'économie canadienne.
And the Canadian economy. It was all resolved, Justin, by the time you invoked the Emergencies Act. Low level, low informed, low information voters are not going to know they're being lied to in real time, because that blockade was over by the time Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act by way of court injunction.
And at Coutts in Alberta,
Oh yeah, Coutts.
guns were found at the blockade. There was
That's a lie. That's a lie. They were not found at the blockade. Not to justify it. That, from my understanding, they were not found at the blockade. They were found a distance away from the blockade. Imagine, in rural Alberta, guns found. What kind of guns were they, Justin?
risk that people promoting ideologically motivated violent extremism could act out, or that they could inspire others to act out against their fellow citizens.
I'm
The
going to let it
situation
run.
was volatile
Oh, it was volatile.
and out of control.
Out of control.
The Emergencies Act provided us with more tools to safely bring the illegal blockades and occupations to an end.
It provided us with more tools. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm no Emergencies Act expert, although I might very well be at this point in time. Close to. I'm not. I'm joking. The invocation of the Emergencies Act was not supposed to add more tools to an already existing inventory. It was to provide the tools when existing tools were insufficient or inadequate. The evidence that the existing tools were sufficient and were adequate, existing tools were used to end the Windsor blockade. That's even assuming the disruption of a national emergency level, but it doesn't matter.
Let's be clear.
Well, let's be clear. You're going to get lied to. He's going to lie to you now. Let's be clear. And what is going to be the lie? Guaranteed. I don't know what he says right now. It's going to be bullshit.
We didn't want to have to invoke the Emergencies Act.
Bullshit! You wanted to do it from day one. You wanted to do it. You did everything in your power to provoke a violent response from that crowd. Everything in your power. Let's be clear. We didn't want to. You know what? I'm clear. Now I know that you did want to. Oh my God. And by the way, I hadn't actually heard that part afterwards. I knew it was going to be bullshit. It's bullshit. And it's actual, methinks the lady doth protesteth too much. I didn't want to do this. Look what you made me do. Typical abuser rhetoric. Look what you made me do to you. I didn't want to hurt you.
It's a measure of last resort
that we used as a first resort. We're all out of ideas. We've tried nothing, and we're all out of ideas, to quote Ned Flanders' beatnik parents.
But the risk to personal safety, the risk to livelihoods,
Oh, really?
and equally the risk of people losing faith in the rule of law that upholds our society and our freedoms, those risks were real.
Oh, irony, I've lost faith in our legal system. I've lost faith in our rule of law, because there is no rule of law in Canada right now. There's rule of Trudeau. And he's got his cronies in the police. He's got his cronies in the courts, or I should say in the commission, that just ratified the rule of law. Personal safety? 3.5 weeks that protest went on. Do you want to tell me anybody who was assaulted? Anyone, any act of violence perpetrated by the protesters in the name of the protest? No. There was arson, which Justin Trudeau's cronies in the media tried to blame on the convoy. That was totally unrelated to the convoy. Oh, the desecration of the monuments. They desecrated the Terry Fox monument by putting a flag in his hand.
Responsible leadership required us to restore
Look at Christopher
and
Freeland.
order.
Look at her. Oh, what happened there?
Après avoir entendu des douzaines
After
de
having
témoins,
heard
après avoir
a dozen
étudié
of
les documents nécessaires,
whatever, after
la
analyzing the
Commission sur
documents
l'état
necessary,
d'urgence a indiqué que l'année dernière, on faisait effectivement face à une urgence nationale
the commission concluded that last year we faced a national
très
emergency
élevé à respecter
And-
pour
and that we-
invoquer la loi sur les mesures d'urgence.
and that we met the high threshold
été
to invoke
atteint.
the Emergencies Act. It was reached.
Ces mesures ne devraient jamais être prises à la légère.
These measures should never be taken lightly.
Depuis le début, notre gouvernement était confiant que c'était une décision responsable
From the beginning, our government was comfortable that it was a responsible act to take.
et on savait qu'il y aurait une commission d'enquête
And we knew
pour
there was going to be
assurer d'être transparent
to ensure that
pour les Canadiens.
that it was transparent for Canadians.
The report provides a comprehensive, objective account of what happened.
Yeah. By the way, it's necessarily subjective by the subjective interpretation of the Commissioner Rouleau, but whatever. Semantics.
also provides recommendations. Within the next year, our government will issue a comprehensive public response to the Commissioner's recommendations. On est tous d'accord qu'on n'aurait jamais dû en arriver là.
We're all agreed we
Et on
should
est
have
tous
gotten here.
d'accord qu'il y a des leçons importantes
And
à
we all
tirer
agree that
pour
there's
tous les
important
gens
lessons
impliqués.
to draw from this for everyone involved.
Because of the thoughtful work of the Commission,
Because of the thought. Oh,
there
sorry.
are
his English.
lessons for everyone involved.
Oh, thank you.
Law enforcement agencies, all orders of government, and elected officials.
Yeah, there's a lesson for me. I can get away with murder. No, luckily no one died. I can get away with assault. There's a very important lesson for me. People say like Teflon Don or Teflon Trudeau. Like there's a very important lesson. When you're the dictator, you get away with crimes against your own citizens. Like it's not Teflon Kim Jong-il or it's not Teflon President Xi. When you're in a dictatorship and you're the dictator, you get away with your crimes. Justin Trudeau has gotten away with his crimes, in my humble opinion.
We will take seriously what the Commissioner concludes and what he proposes. Responsible leadership means that we are always striving to do the very best for Canadians, in words and in deeds.
Yep. Can I cue the picture of the police, kneeing veterans? Oh, okay. Just let it play out. Let's let it play out.
Il y a 2 jours,
Oh, look at that face.
c'était le jour du drapeau canadien.
2 days ago, it was the day of
Il y
the
a
Canadian
58
flag.
ans, l'unifolié a été hissé sur la colline du Parlement pour la première fois.
58 years ago, the maple leaf was unveiled
Chaque
for the
fois que
first
je vois
time.
notre drapeau,
Every time I see our
je vois des
flag,
valeurs comme l'ouverture.
I see values like
compassion.
openness.
2 days ago, it was Flag Day.
Oh, he has to say
We
this again.
celebrated the fact that 58 years ago, the maple leaf was raised over Parliament Hill for the very first time. When I look at the Canadian flag, I see hope.
I
I
don't.
see people who work hard every day.
I see a
I
tyrant.
see a country that has overcome tremendous challenges.
You are the biggest challenge
There's a
Canada
reason.
has to overcome now.
Why Canada is one of the most successful democracies in the world.
According to whom? According to whom, Trudeau? I think Canada fell down the list of democracies and free societies recently. I'll pull that up to fact check myself in a second. Jamie, pull that up.
It's because we work at it.
Oh yeah.
It's not always easy. Actually, sometimes it can be pretty hard.
I don't want to have to punish you. Don't make me. I don't like punishing you. It's very hard for me to do this.
But it's worth it.
Look at Chrystia Freeland.
Here in Ottawa, this Parliament, the Senate, the Supreme Court, these are not only old buildings, they're the institutions that protect our rights and freedoms.
Like the same federal court that said mandatory quarantine hotels were not a violation of charter rights. The same courts that said a mandatory curfew was not a violation of charter rights. The same court that said your charter challenge to the vaccine mandates for planes and trains after 9 months gets dismissed for mootness because the government decided to stop abusing you. Oh yeah, nobody's lost faith in those institutions.
This is something we must all continue to care for and defend. Not just governments.
Look at that sneer, actually. Look at that sneer. Right there. Look at here. Look at this.
Not just
There, look at that
governments.
sneer in his face.
Not just elected leaders, but all Canadians.
All Canadians.
Our democracy is the responsibility of all of us together.
Look at
Healthy
Lametti.
democracy
Look at Lametti on the right.
is always going to make us stronger, especially in this moment of change and global uncertainty.
Oh, it's a moment of change, all right.
So let's be there for one another.
And if you say something I don't like or you do something I don't like, I'll get the police.
Let's listen to and respect each other.
Listen to and
even if we
respect each
don't
other.
always agree.
Even if we don't listen to each
And
other.
let's
Trudy.
continue to build a better future for all Canadians.
Mm.
Merci beaucoup.
Hold on 1 second. Canada list freedom. Chart? Rating. There you go. It was rating. Let's see here. So freedom index by country. 2023. Let me see. Is dark good or is dark bad? If I had to guess, hover over tile for details. This graph does nothing. Oh, here, hold on. So let's see here. What is this? Oh, here we go. Let's see. Canada's number 6, 8.95. I remember reading an article where they were talking about how Canada had fallen down the index of free countries. Okay, that was painful. That was as painful for me as it was for you, everybody. Okay, now what I'm going to do, because I forgot to do it, I'm going to end this on YouTube. Come on over to Rumble and or Locals. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. I'm going to end it on YouTube. Let me just make sure that I pinned the comment. I did. I'm going to read some rants when we get to Rumble. And I'm going to see if I haven't missed any. So here, everybody, get ready to move on over. Because we're moving on up to Rumble side. Okay, go to Rumble. Did I miss any Rumble, any super chats in YouTube? Let's, for the sake of it, just see if we're still monetized on YouTube. Not that I give a sweet bugger all. YouTube tends to hate Justin Trudeau's voice. Oh, we're still good. Okay, now did I miss any? I don't think I missed any super chats. Okay, guys, head on over. We're 2,500 people on YouTube. Let's move on over to Rumble and support a platform that supports free speech. Ending it now on YouTube. See you on Rumble. I'm going to read some rants and go to the Viva Barnes Law local live chat, and we're gonna continue with some more stuff. I've got highlights from the report. Diagolon. I now truly understand how, in some circumstances, not all, in some circumstances, extremists are not born; they are literally created out of whole cloth. Ending on YouTube, going to Rumble 3.